But you're glad you're not doing that. It's always bad to start with a disclaimer. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. I'm not with Scottish Government. I think my father would be twirling in his grave if he thought I was. But what I do is I work quite closely with the education policy team in Scottish Government and some of the other national agencies with and alongside my colleagues in the Association of Directors of Education. And what I'd like to really do by way of starting your conference, and it's brilliant to see such a good turnout today, what I'd like to do is maybe just set your discussions and so on in a context, in a Scottish context, say a little bit about some of the key commitments of the Scottish Government and how I see them, and then particularly talk a wee bit about the whole business of teacher education, where there's such a lot happening just now, and I think an awful lot of opportunities for you as chartered teachers and members of the education community to take advantage of. So the context that we're working in obviously is a very, very tight financial context, but even within that backdrop, an awful lot going on. The Scottish system is doing extremely well by any comparisons, and we are seeing improvements on many fronts. But, complacency and comfort is always dangerous, isn't it? And I think probably the biggest challenge that the Scottish educational system faces just now, and certainly that the Scottish Government has outlined, is a long-standing generational issue that, of course, is the link between poverty and achievement in education. For far too many children and young people in Scotland, where you live, where you're growing up, it has an awful lot to do with how well you'll do in the system. And in some cases, it is generational. And that, for sure, is the biggest challenge we face as a nation as far as education is concerned. We also know from local research, national research, international research, what the two most important criteria are as far as a successful school is concerned and a successful system is concerned. And of course, that's excellent leadership and excellent teaching. And I don't think we should ever, forget that. So what is it we're doing about that? What is the government committed to doing about that? They're committed to improving the life chances of young Scots. Now, that's a very glib and easy thing to say, but there's a number of very important policy things I'll tell you about that they're committed to and actually actively following through. Improving the life chances of young Scots. Tackling that link that we have in Scotland between poverty and success in school, and it is generational. And by improving the life chances of young Scots and improving that whole business of the link between poverty and success in school, we'll be improving the outcomes for our kids. They're committed to intervening early in a young person's life if necessary, early interventions, and if necessary, transferring spend into early interventions in a young person's life. Absolutely committed to increasing attainment and achievement for all young people in Scotland. And of course, ultimately that means that we're all about improving the positive destinations of our school leavers. And there's a direct link between those aims and those commitments and the economic well-being of Scotland. Because when we do come out of recession, it will be a well-equipped, well-trained young group of Scottish people that will take this country forward. And that's what that policy backdrop is about also. So what does that actually mean in terms of what's happening as far as the government's concerned? As far as I see it, one of the most important commitments is the prioritisation of early years. And we all know as educationalists how important it is, those early years of a young person's life, particularly if that person is in some disadvantage. Increase in entitlements for early year services. And that's not just about increasing the number of hours at nursery. There's a whole swathe of things there. Ensuring that everyone working with children and young people collaborate around that, getting it right for every child, the GIRFEC agenda. So early years and GIRFEC, absolutely central to what's happening, so much so that the government has actually committed to a legislative programme in Parliament to make sure that that happens, and they're extremely serious about that. A minister actually has got that as her main responsibility. Within the constraints of the UK government settlement, the financial settlement, the Scottish Government is also trying to invest in capital spend to improve our school estate, and also following the announcement last week of the ICT and Excellence Group, improving the quality of information technology across our school estate. And of course, crucially important, something that's run through a number of different administrations in Scottish Government, is delivering curriculum for excellence as a major improvement of school experiences. And we see some wonderful examples of that on a daily basis right across the nation. And in fact, my own association, ADES, will be having a major conference in May where we're actually celebrating curriculum for excellence. Why not celebrate curriculum for excellence? And then finally, and perhaps really crucially for your own conference today and your own interest, implementing the Donaldson report and the subsequent National Partnership Group recommendations. So a major agenda there, starting from the early years, ensuring that we'll have a 3 to 18 curriculum, a 21st century curriculum being delivered in a sort of 21st century surroundings that we aspire to, but also having the best quality workforce there, working with our young people as educators to make sure as learners they're ready for making the most of their lives. Mike Russell, the Cabinet Secretary, accepted the National Partnership Group report, which followed Graham Donaldson's work, but he also has made it very clear, and a number of the parties concerned are here today, he's made it very clear that there's a need for the speed of delivery of that. And an implementation board has actually been put together. It was meeting yesterday, in fact, and the principal of Kumar University is actually chairing that. And they will be held to account, the different partners there will be held to account by the Cabinet Secretary on the speed of delivery of this. And for me anyway, and I can go back a few years on this, I think there's a degree of rigour around this that I haven't seen before in some educational developments. There's a demand, and I use that word quite deliberately, there's a demand for better early phase partnerships between universities and schools and local authorities, and it's actually a bit of work that I'm personally involved in right now. So there needs to be that sort of partnership at the very start of the teacher education process that perhaps hasn't been there before in a more formal situation, and a less formal situation, and if you like, across Scotland, a lot of disparity. They're also looking at improved standards to make sure that those young people, those aspiring teachers who come into the profession are of the very highest standard. And STEC is actually carrying out some work on that just now. Because of course, by getting the very best into teaching, we're likely to get the very best for our young people. They're also absolutely determined that teachers get every opportunity through the GTCS, and it's good to see Tony and his team here today, that teachers are committed to their own professional development, and the GTCS are carrying on working that on professional standards, and of course the absolute centrality of the PRD process for all professionals who are out there working with young people. And of course, a determination which is backed by money to increase the number of teachers who are working at master's level And we'll say a wee bit more about that in the seminar I'm taking later on today. And that's, of course, building on prior learning, and STEC, again, is looking at processes for that. There's actually £3 million being set aside by the government to increase the numbers of teachers at master's level. And already 1.6 million of that has been committed, and very, very soon 570 teachers in Scotland are going to benefit from that. So that gives you an indication of the determination to do something about that. There's obviously a balance of the funds that we're currently looking at, so if you have any suggestions how we could best use that balance as an association around that whole master's level commitment, we'd be delighted to hear from you. And of course, as far as that link between the quality of education at school and at system level and the quality of the good teacher, but also the quality of leadership, there's some work underway through Education Scotland looking at a Scottish College for Educational Leadership. So an awful lot happening in the field of teacher education at present. I would suggest that as an association, that's something that you need to get in and try to influence. I think there's a realisation, from where I sit anyway, that this isn't about a quick win, short-term success. And I think it's important that we, as professionals, always try to influence governments, plural governments, that these sort of things aren't about quick win 4 or 5 year successes. It's about building on a successful system that we've had for decades and we've been proud of for decades, and having a world-class teaching force. That is the aspiration that we have, a world-class teaching force. And in order to do this, we need to engage widely. There'll be a communication strategy coming through the government very soon. David Roy, who's heading the team in government that's leading on this, will be with you all day. So David, you can maybe put your hand up, and he'll be able to answer a bit more of the detailed questions around that. I think the important message I would like to leave you with today, other than have a good conference, as far as teacher education is concerned and your role as chartered teachers, is that it's really important that you play an active role in where we're going with this. You're a very well qualified and experienced group of professionals, and this, I think, the journey that we're on just now may be a great opportunity for you. So that's the aspiration, that's the context for Scottish Government, and the partners and the different agencies involved, whether it's the GTC, whether it's the universities, whether it's associations like my own, we are committed to that as well, and we are being held to account by government to do that. But we can't do that on our own. So again, please engage with us on that. And despite the financial climate that we're in, and it's extremely difficult, and it's likely to get even more difficult over the next 2 to 3 years, believe it or not, despite that, there's a commitment to continue to invest in teacher education, because ultimately, only through that will we improve the life chances of our young people. So again, I do hope you have a good day here. I think it's a wonderful turnout. Congratulations to the organisers for getting us here today and arranging for the nice weather. I hope it's going to be a nice day down in Twickenham as well, and we can get some good news on our way home. Thanks very much indeed.